In today's video, I'm sharing 5 simple tips that you can use right away to start improving your drawing and illustration skills. Just a reminder before we get started, I now have a blog. Many of you have asked for photos of the artwork, more product links. You'll find all of that on the blog, so head over there after the video. So tip number 1 is to start with a guide. So what I'm going to do is draw a couple things, and I always begin in pencil, almost always, unless I'm drawing something I'm really confident with. So my first drawing is a cactus. For the pot, I draw a square. Then I start blocking out the appendages of my little cactus, basically just doing circles and ovals to get the basic form. Let's do some flowers really quickly. I do circles and ovals where I want those flowers to sit. Now I've set myself up for success and still working in pencil. I can begin to add details. You can see me kind of rounding out the flower pot a little bit, so it's not quite so square anymore, but the size is the same. Same thing with the flowers. My pencil guide informs the size of the flowers, but I begin to add leaves and petals and all of those details. Now I'm going to go over it in pen, and by the time you're actually putting pen to paper, you're going to be pretty confident you've blocked out your drawing with pencil, then you've done some details in pencil, and now we add the pen. And at any point, if you need to give yourself another guide, maybe keeping things straight, those sorts of details, you can still do a pencil guide at any given time. And in pen, I like to add subtle details, like wiggling the pen a little bit to make sure my lines aren't too smooth when I do the flower petals. So little stuff like that is the only change I make when working in pen, and maybe some little extras, like adding an extra leaf to the branch there. So tip number 1 is give yourself that pencil guide. Don't just try to put pen to paper right away. Tip number 2 is move the pen towards you. Actually, this tip is more like move the pen in a way that feels comfortable and natural to you. So I'm going to make this fun little card, and we're going to talk about that. I find that it's easiest to pull the pen towards my body. So I'll often, kind of use these downward motions, and that helps me keep the pen steady. So if you need to turn your artwork upside down, whether you're painting or drawing, I think it's a very natural motion to move your arm in towards yourself, towards your body. Now, you might find it easier to go from side to side. You might find that is your really smooth motion. The thing is, sometimes when we put pressure on ourselves to draw well, we end up shaking the pen and actually jittering a lot. So what I like to do is have a motion that I know I'm going to be really steady and even. And for me, that's moving the pen towards me. And that's how I do my simple hand-drawn border where the lines are nice and straight, but not too straight. And this is just a good tip to remember when you're having trouble keeping that pen steady. My third piece of advice is to refine and transfer. And we're going to talk about what that means. So I'm starting a drawing of flowers. As we just talked about earlier in the video, I'm starting with my guide, and then I start adding in details, and I'm going to work out a simple floral illustration in pencil. Then, as we also talked about, I'm going to go over my pencil drawing in pen, and that is a process of refining. We started with basic circles, then we added more details in pencil. Now with pen, I'm able to make little changes, switch things up. But when I really want to refine an illustration, I go to tracing paper. Tracing allows you to change what you don't like about your illustration and keep what you do. You're tracing your own work, there's no shame in it, and you can make so many subtle changes and just make your drawing so much better. So I want to make this second flower a little larger, and you can see I'm just able to do that really easily. I'm adding some extra petals on the outside. And then what you can do is you can actually pick up the tracing paper, move it around if you need to, if you want to place a leaf in a different spot. So it gives you so much freedom to refine your work and change it in the most subtle ways. You can really perfect your drawings this way and get them looking just the way you want. And this is also a great trick for transferring your work onto different paper or good copy paper, and we'll talk about that. So what I'm doing here is I wanted to switch up some of the leaves. I moved some things around. I changed the size of one thing of that flower, and now you can see I've really taken my illustration from a simple sketch and I've refined it and perfected it, and I'm much happier with it now. So there's quite a difference between those two, and it was a very quick and simple step. Now what we're going to do, I'm doing another card, and I'm just going to tape the tracing paper in place. And this is the transfer step. I use graphite transfer paper. You can find it at most art stores or on Amazon. We place it dark side down under the tracing paper, sort of sandwich it in there, and then use a sharp pencil, like a mechanical pencil, to go over your entire drawing in order to transfer it. So another easy step. And once that's done, you're just going to lift that up and you'll have a really nice transfer. And now you could add watercolor to that. You can go over it with pen, pencil, crayon, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to quickly go over this with my fine liner. And at this point, I know the drawing so well. I've drawn it a bunch of times, so I'm really comfortable with it. So if you have kind of put some pressure on yourself to do a nice piece, tracing and transferring is definitely the way to go. Our fourth tip is to add shading. This sometimes gets overlooked, and it is a stylistic choice, but I think adding line shading is a great way to make your illustrations really pop and look so much more sophisticated. Now, line shading can be as simple as adding line details, like adding some lines to these leaves, right? Or you can actually add shading like I'm doing here, coloring in one side of each leaf, and I'm really adding to the look of depth and perspective by adding the shading here. I'll add some simple lines at the center of the flowers to indicate that they're sort of curving inward toward their center. This is a little bit concave, these flowers. And maybe we have some more lines under the petals where they meet to show that the sun wouldn't hit there necessarily. So there's a bit of shadow. I'm also doing some extra lines just to show the texture of the flowers. Let's do an example together from start to finish. I'm going to sketch out this little milk carton. And so what we want to do is think about, where is the light coming from? I'm going to put the light on the right-hand side. It's up to you as the artist to decide where the imaginary light source is. So let me go over this in pen. I just want to get rid of some of my pencil lines there. I'm a messy sketcher. And now that we've gone over it in pen, we've done a contour drawing, which is just a basic line drawing. I just spelled milk with 2 Ks. Okay, it's gonna be that kind of day. Anyways, so my contour drawing is done. Now I want to add some shading, some line shading. Well, my light source is on the right-hand side, so right away I'm going to add some lines on the left of this milk carton because it's not going to be as bright, it's not going to be as well lit. And I'm just making this up. As the artist, I'm saying, oh, I'm going to put the light on the right, you could put it on the left, you could have your subject be lit from the bottom, whatever you want. And I'm just sort of thinking about where would it be a little bit darker, and I'm adding some lines there. And you can do a bit of cross-hatching. That's when you do lines that are at an angle to one another, like I've done at the bottom. You can do some scribbling. There are so many ways. You could do stippling, which is just dotting. There's lots and lots of ways for you to add shading, and how you do it is totally up to you and your own unique style. But let's say we just do another simple cactus together. I might put the simplest little bit of shading under the lip of that flower pot, and then maybe just a tiny bit on the bottom of those cactus arms. And that's it. It doesn't have to be a lot, but adding a touch of shading can really elevate your drawing. And I think on the flowers, that's really obvious. It really added a lot to them, to add those lines to show the texture of the petals, to show the shape and curve of the leaves. It's a nice touch that you can do right at the end of your drawing. And my final piece of advice is know your nib sizes. So this is something that a lot of beginner artists are not aware of, and fine liner or artist pens often come in different sizes of nibs, and that's the nib is the pen tip, and the little number right here refers to the size of that tip. So my graphic line marker is a 03, and then I just happen to have all these Pigma microns here, and I have an 01, an 02, all the way up to an 08. Now I want to do a little example to show you the difference between these nibs. The 01 is really tiny, very delicate, great for line shading and small details. You might not see too much difference there with the 02, but as we get into the 03, I think you can see that the line is thicker, and then the 05 is a bit of a jump, and that line is much chunkier. And we finish with the 08 where it's this very dark, thick, impactful line. Now what I often do is I'll draw with the 05 or the 03, and then I bring in my 01, my really tiny one, and that's what I use to do the line shading. So knowing your nib sizes and what you like to use them for gives you a level of precision that you just can't achieve having only one pen in your pencil box. Pigma microns come in sets, and you can get all of the nib sizes in one purchase. That's all my tips. Thank you, friends, for watching today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and head over to my new blog for photos and product links. Thanks for watching.